Good morning and welcome to Grandy & Associates Business Advantage webinar. Today's webinar is titled Maintenance Agreements, Contractors Golden Goose. Today's presenter is Tom Grandy, the founder of Grandy & Associates. And so with that, I will turn it over to Tom.
Okay, thank you, Paul. I appreciate that. And I appreciate each of you taking valuable time out of your busy schedules to hopefully learn a little bit more about maintenance agreements, which are literally the foundation stone for profitable growth. I think you're familiar with our company. We appreciate you being an Advantage member, and if it's fine value for you, we hope you'll share that with other contractors across the country. As I mentioned a moment ago, maintenance agreements are literally the foundation stone for profitable growth in the 21st century. During our time this afternoon, this morning, we're going to talk about why maintenance agreements are of value to you and to your customers. We're going to talk about how to market maintenance agreements, both internally and externally. And we're going to talk about how to actually create a customized threefold maintenance agreement brochure. And then once you have that, how do you use it? Now, I want to spend just a couple of minutes as we get started this morning talking about why you as a service contractor, and I don't care what trade you're in, you as a service contractor need to offer maintenance agreements. There's several benefits for that. Consistent cash flow. Those of you who have followed us for a long time know that the number one thing that puts us out of business is improper labor pricing. But the second thing that puts us out of business is cash flow. Well, the beauty of a really good maintenance agreement department is that as you continue to add maintenance agreements, guess what? They get renewed throughout the year. When you get 200, 500, in some cases several thousand maintenance agreements, guess what? You got a significant amount of cash coming in every single month, even during your slow times. So a big advantage of maintenance agreements is consistent cash flow. Second benefit is it works, you get to pre-schedule the work. That reduces your non-billable time. That means if you got a technician who only has 5 hours worth of work scheduled for tomorrow, you can send him out on a maintenance agreement or two, fill up the rest of his day. That keeps him busy, reduces your non-billable time, and helps the whole company become more efficient. Third benefit of a maintenance agreement is it nearly guarantees any service work done during the year, you're going to do it. Why? Well, typically your maintenance agreement is going to have a 5, 10, or 15, or maybe even 20% discount for maintenance agreement customers. Well, if the customer is getting a 10, 15, or 20% discount for service work, why would they call anybody else when it's to have a call? Well, they won't. They're going to call you. And probably the biggest advantage, biggest long-term advantage is number 4. And that's the eventual replacement of the equipment. Over the years, you're going to be in their house once or twice a year on the maintenance agreement, maybe once more during the year on a call. You're going to be doing that year after year after year. Now it's time to replace the equipment. Who are they going to call? Well, most of the time they're going to call you, usually without a competing bid, and always at a higher profit margin than you get from a brand new customer. Another advantage of a maintenance agreement program is you have improved job security for the technicians. Why? Because it keeps them busier throughout the year. You can begin to use your maintenance agreement work to fill in those slow times, which we'll talk about here in just a little bit. And you got happier customers. Why? They're not calling you when the equipment's broken down and they're upset and they're angry. You're out there working on the equipment when it's running. Therefore, you have happier customers. And if a tech learns how to sell maintenance agreements, guess what? That begins to give them the confidence to talk about other add-on sales as well. Once they get comfortable talking about maintenance agreements, then they can start more efficiently talking about add-on sales or different specials you might be running or things like that when they're in front of the customer. And lastly, a good maintenance agreement program is going to increase the selling price of your company substantially. We'll talk about that here in just a moment. But let's talk about selling your company a little bit. You don't have anything to sell in your company until 2 things are true. Number 1, you have the company's able to run without you. And number 2, you have a significant amount of monthly income that's somewhat guaranteed. Well, guess what? The only guaranteed income, or even semi-guaranteed, is maintenance agreement work. But let's go back to number 1. In order to sell your company, it's got to be able to run without you. That means systems need to be in place, kind of like McDonald's. The typical purchaser of a McDonald's franchise doesn't work in the franchise. They hire a bunch of people, they send them to McDonald's University, they learn the systems, and they come back and they run the operation according to that system. Okay? Well, the same principle applies to your company. I want to strongly suggest that over the next several months, and it may take you a year or two, have everybody in your company document every single thing they do. Write down the systems. I mean, everything from as simple as when the phone rings, who answers it? When they answer it, what do they say to the customer? Script it. What information do they need to collect from the customer? Who puts it into the customer base? Write down your system for receivables. Write down your system for invoicing. Write down your system for how to charge a credit card. In other words, everything you do within the company, make sure it's documented as a system and put in a 3-ring notebook. Once you think you've got everything pretty well lined out, that's when the fun begins. That's when you and your wife, you take a vacation for a week and you turn off your cell phone. Phone rings from the office, don't answer it. And when you get back after a week, guess what's going to happen? Well, gee, we couldn't find this. We had this problem and we couldn't. How do we take care of that? Well, guess what we do next? We tweak the systems a little bit. After we've done that, we take another vacation, and pretty soon we take 2 weeks and then 3 weeks until you get to the point that the company can literally run without you. Then you have something to sell, but not until. Now, when it comes to the selling of your company, kind of a rough rule of thumb is that you take the profit plus the owner's salary plus any fringes he gets and multiply that value up times 2 or 3 and then add in the asset value of the company. That gives you a rough idea of what the company should be worth on the open market. Valued at 2 to 3 times. It's valued at 6 to 7 times its value. Why? Because it's somewhat guaranteed income. Another good industry rule of thumb is that for every maintenance agreement you got in place, it's worth $400 when you get ready to sell the company. So do some quick math. If you got 1,000 maintenance agreements and that's $400 a piece, guess what? That's $400,000 right off the bat. I know lots of companies have 2, 3, maybe 5,000 or more maintenance agreements. What's that do to the value of your company? Agreements are literally the foundation stone for profitable growth, and they're also the basis for selling your company in most cases. So let's review again. Why do we want to have a maintenance agreement program? Consistent cash flow. You get to schedule the work. It reduces the non-billable time. It guarantees service work done during the year. You're going to do it. The eventual replacement of equipment. Employee job security. Happier customers. Tech learns how to sell maintenance agreements. They can sell other things as well. And it adds significant value to your company if and when you get ready to sell it. Now, question always pops up, should maintenance agreements be a totally separate department within your company? And the answer is yes, and the answer is no. If you're just starting out with a maintenance agreement program, just make it part of your regular service department. But when you get to the point that your maintenance agreements are 5 or 10% of your gross sales, or you have the equivalent of 1 full-time service technician, that's the point you want to think about making it a total separate department. But if you're just starting out, make it part of your service department. If you've got 500 or more maintenance agreements, I would strongly suggest you create that as a total separate department when you're modeling your company for profitability. Now, when it comes to determining the price for a maintenance agreement, we need several pieces of information. Number one, what services are going to be included? What overhead costs are going to increase? And we know some of the variable overhead like gasoline and maintenance is going to go up for sure, and probably some advertising dollars as well. And then how are you going to market the program? Well, gee, you have to spend some dollars in some form, which we'll talk about here in a little while, in order to get the word out. Well, those are all costs that have to be included in terms of the pricing of your sales commissions. I absolutely recommend you pay a commission for the person who sells a maintenance agreement. Throughout the industry, it's usually $5, $8, $10, $12, maybe $15 at most. You know what I found out after 29 years of working with contractors across this country? You wave a $20 bill in front of the technicians, it gets their attention. $5 or $8, I'm not going to fiddle with it. But you offer a $20 commission to a tech, they can sell 5 maintenance agreements during the week. That's $100 in their pocket, and that's significant. So I suggest a $20 commission for the person who sells a maintenance agreement. Now, get all employees involved in selling maintenance agreements, not just the technicians, all the employees involved. That includes people in the office. That includes your salespeople. That includes anybody in the organization. They all have friends, neighbors, relatives. They all have relationships outside the company. It's not any of those people, and earn the $20 for doing it. Now, before commissions are paid, I want you to think about requiring something from the seller of the maintenance agreement. One of the most unique things I've seen in a long time was with a large plumbing company down in Texas. They were actually Contractor of the Year that year. I spent several days with them and was walking with them and talking with them. I noticed their technicians were coming in early and seemed to be writing something on the table. So I asked the owner, I said, what's going on? I don't quite understand this. He said, well, first of all, we have a very vibrant maintenance agreement program. And each of our technicians, and he had 6, I believe it was, service technicians, he said, we pay them $20 for every maintenance agreement they sell. However, before they can get their $20, you know what we require they do? I said, no, what? He said, we require that they come in early on their own time and write a physical thank you note to the customer. Now, we supply the thank you note paper and the stamps and all that sort of thing. They don't get their commission until they've written a handwritten thank you note to the customer. Now, some of the techs are real good in school. They're great in English. They could write their own thank you notes, no problem whatsoever. Now, you notice over here on the board, some of them don't have that ability. So he had about 6 or 8 different 4x6 cards with a typewritten thank you note on each one of them. And if a technician chose to, they could simply take that push pin off the board, take the piece of paper to their seat, and write it out word for word. But they had to write a physical thank you note in order to earn their commission. Now think about it. When is the last time you as an individual received a written thank you from anybody for anything? In today's world, you might get a phone call, perhaps a text. You might even get an email saying, hey, I enjoyed dinner at your house last night, or whatever it was. When's the last time you got a handwritten thank you note? And if you did get one, you know what? I bet you remember it. Now, I've got 3 daughters. My youngest daughter got married about 7 or 8 years ago, and she lives in Lexington, Kentucky. Now, I'm in Owensboro, Kentucky. That's about 3 hours east of us. That's important. When she got engaged, it was going to be a year before she got married. And she came to me right after she got engaged and said, Dad, and by the way, the wedding was going to be in Owensboro. I said, Dad, I'd like to do something just a little bit different at the wedding. I said, what's that? I said, well, we got this trolley here in Owensboro. I'd like to see if we could rent that trolley. And the church is in one location. The reception hall is going to be a couple miles from there. And just kind of run people back and forth on the city trolley. We can get it decorated. It'd be kind of fun. I said, well, that sounds interesting. Let me check with the city and find out even if they rent it. And if they do, how much it costs. And I'll get back to you. Well, I checked with the city. And sure enough, they did rent the trolley. And the price was rather reasonable. So I said, okay, excuse me, look on your calendar and see if you got such and such a date available. That was roughly a year out. They said, yes, it's on, that day is open. I said, good. Can you pencil me in for the trolley for that day or that evening? And they said, well, sure. I said, great. Now, do you have a contract I need to sign? Do I need to send you a deposit? I mean, what do we need to do at this point? They said nothing. I said, like, you're on the calendar. To worry about something, guess what? I worry about it. So the next month I called the city again. I said, I just checking, wanted to make sure we were on your calendar to rent the trolley at such and such a date. And they said, yes, Mr. Grandy, you're on the calendar. Call back the next month, same thing, Mr. Grandy, you're on the calendar. You don't need to keep calling us. You're on the calendar. Okay, so I stopped calling. Day of the wedding came. It's about 3 hours before the wedding. My wife and I are at the house. We're getting dressed, getting ready to go over to the church. I get a phone call. Guess who from? The city of Owensboro. By the way, Mr. Grandy, we're very sorry, but the trolley that you had scheduled today for your wedding, we're not going to be there. So what do you mean you're not going to be there? I've had that thing scheduled for a year. Well, we're sorry. We can't be there today. And I said, why not? I said, well, the driver's kind of caught up in Indiana. He can't get back in time. Again, we're very sorry, but it's just not going to happen. Well, as you can imagine, I kind of flew into a tizzy. How do I get the wedding party from point A to point B and all that sort of thing? So I quickly lined up a limo, at least for the bridal bride and the husband, to get back and forth. And I went down to the church, and I was there about an hour early. And I was talking to my future father-in-law, whom I didn't know real well at that point. And I was telling him about the situation. Well, at that point, I was totally unaware of it. But my future father-in-law's brother was a city manager of Owensboro. Now, he got on the telephone, and to make a very long story short, trolley showed up on time. Now, that's not the story. Okay? It showed up on time. 3 months. Now, remember, the wedding was in Owensboro. They live in Lexington, Kentucky, 3 hours away. About 2 to 3 months later, my daughter and son-in-law got a handwritten note, handwritten letter, actually, from the trolley driver, talking about how he even got their address, I don't know. But he talked about what a wonderful time he had. He'd never done anything like that in his life. He and everybody all dressed up, enjoyed the conversations, hope I get to do something like that again. Signed it. When I got to my got to my daughter's house a few weeks after that, she showed me the letter. It was pathetic. I mean, the grammar was terrible. The lines were going up and down. It was really poorly written. But you know where that letter was? It was typed, or not taped, it had a magnet, and it was on their refrigerator. Why? Because somebody took the time to write a handwritten thank you note to say thank you. That's the power of the handwritten thank you note. Now, I suggest you think about having your technicians send one of those to every customer after they've sold a maintenance agreement. Now, make the paying of commissions a big deal. Don't just put it into their regular check. Write a separate check, maybe have a pizza once a month, and hand out the checks in front of everybody else. There's a lot of value in having John get his $300 check from maintenance agreements he sold, and then we got William over here who gets $20. You know what? They start talking to each other. Hey, how did you earn $300? I wasn't able to do that. Money involved. It becomes internal competition. So make paying of things a big deal and do it at a separate time. Now, we all have, in most trades industries, we have about 90 slow days a year. That means 90 days that aren't totally filled with regular repair service. And most techs bill out about 50% of their actual time. So that means each tech needs to fill 360 hours per year. And the only way to fill that is with maintenance agreement work. Well, if you take the 360 hours a year, let's say my maintenance agreement is going to take me an hour and a half a year. That is, I'm going to have 45 minutes of wrench time twice a year. If I take that 360 hours and divide it by 1.5 hours per agreement, that means the technician needs 240 agreements in order to fill those 90 slow days a year. I want to strongly suggest that you keep track of how many maintenance agreements each technician has sold, and their goal needs to be, in this particular example, 240 agreements. Once they've got that, they have earned enough maintenance agreement work to keep them busy throughout the year. So let's say I've got 5 technicians, and we hit one of those slow periods. Gee, somebody's going to be laid off for a few days. Who's going to be laid off? It's not the guy who sold 325 maintenance agreements. It's going to be the guy who's only sold 75 of them. So it serves as an incentive program as well if you keep track of how many they've sold over the year. Okay. And there's a little calculator within our software program. Some of you are familiar with our labor pricing software program. There's a calculator in there that'll tell you how many maintenance agreements your company needs in order to keep all of your technicians busy throughout the year. Now, when it comes to marketing, the first thing I'm going to say is going to sound a little bit crazy to some of you. I want you to give, yes, give every employee in your organization a free maintenance agreement. Put it right on the schedule, and don't let them do their own. Why? You cannot impart what you don't possess, and you cannot sell what you don't believe in. what's going to happen when that technician's out on the service call and he's telling the customer about this wonderful maintenance agreement program they have, and then the customer looks at the technician and he asks that all-important question. Gee, John, that sounds really neat. By the way, do you have a maintenance agreement on your equipment? No, I don't, but man, there's lots of benefits. I just shared those with you. You really ought to buy one. Okay? There's a lot of difference in that and the customer turning to the technician and saying, by the way, do you have one on your piece of equipment? The technician says, you know what? I have. I've had one for 3 years now. I've had a single emergency breakdown. It runs efficiently. My utilities are consistently low. We're comfortable all the time. Gee, sign me up. Okay? Give them one so they can experience the benefits of a maintenance agreement in case that golden question comes up, and sooner or later it will. Now, I want you to understand something else. People only buy for 2 reasons. They only buy for 1 or 2 reasons. One is fear of loss, and the other is hope of gain. If I don't buy this, what am I going to lose? And that goes for tennis shoes, automobiles, or maintenance agreements. If I don't buy it, what am I going to lose? And if I do buy it, what am I going to gain? Well, those principles apply to our maintenance agreements as well. What are we going to gain if the customer has a maintenance agreement? They're going to get a discount on labor and materials if additional work is done during the year. Possibly you might think about waiving their diagnostic fee, or at least a portion of it, if you're on flat rate pricing. Okay. They're going to get the benefit of their equipment lasting longer. Therefore, it's going to be less expensive. They're going to get priority service. Something breaks down, they go to the top of the list with any other priority customer. They're going to receive the routine maintenance that their equipment not only requires, but in most cases the manufacturer requires in order to keep the warranty valid. Okay? That's a really important thing that we as an industry kind of ignore, but we really need to make it an issue with the customer. In order for the warranty to be valid, your equipment needs to be properly maintained on a regular schedule. That's in all types of equipment. And it's also a safer operation. So what if I don't buy a maintenance agreement? Well, I'm going to have to pay the normal repair pricing. My equipment's going to be replaced quicker. It's going to cost me more money. I'm going to have to pay the full diagnostic or show-up fee. And I can't get a service man because when does it break down? Well, usually during extremes of weather. And if I'm not a priority customer, guess what? I don't go to the top. So what they're really buying, if you get right down to it, what they're really buying is peace of mind. If something happens, I've got somebody I can call that I can get the thing taken care of. Now another question that comes up is, why haven't people bought a maintenance agreement in the past? Well, there's several reasons for that. Number one, too complicated. I mean, I have literally seen maintenance agreements 2 and 3 pages long, typed as real exclusions, and there's 2 places to sign. I mean, it looks like a legal document. It scares people to death, and they won't sign it. Another reason people haven't bought it, they don't believe that there's a real discount for service work. Now, in today's world, most of you are on flat rate pricing, so they can see the difference in the book itself or on your tablet. But in the past, that wasn't always the situation. In the past, what often happened is when people were on time and material, the technician would come in, do the repair, he'd go out to his truck, he'd figure out the cost of the repair, he'd add 15% to it, go back inside the house, show that price to the customer, take 15% off. Gee, I'm paying whatever I'm paying. Now, that may not be the way it actually worked, but from the customer's mindset, that's what they're thinking. Did I get a real discount or not? And again, that evaporates with flat rate pricing. Another reason you should offer maintenance agreements, people haven't bought one, is because they simply haven't been offered one yet. That is rapidly disappearing. As many of you know, the utilities are getting into maintenance agreement programs. Also, the warranty companies are getting heavily into maintenance agreement programs as well. Sooner or later, somebody is going to sell your customer a maintenance agreement, and when they do, they're going to be tied into their organization for a significant period of time. Now, keep in mind, a maintenance agreement needs to be simple. You need to offer 3 things and 3 things only. Annual or semi-annual maintenance of the equipment, depending on which trade you're in, whether you go out once or twice a year. We want to discount labor and or materials if additional work's done during the year. Usually that's 5, 10, or 15%. And thirdly, we want to offer priority service. If something breaks down, they go to the top of the list. As I mentioned earlier, if you're on flat rate pricing and you have a diagnostic fee, you might want to offer a 50% discount on that. Or if you price your things properly, you can actually waive it all together without it costing you money. I'll walk through that process with you if you're interested in it. Give me a call. Okay. Nothing else. Keeping in mind that a customer can't understand your program in 30 seconds or less, they're not going to buy. People are too busy today for a long explanation. Offer these three things and perhaps waiving part of the diagnostic fee as the benefits for having a maintenance agreement program. Now your threefold brochure that we're going to create here, it's got to be crystal clear. What are the benefits? How much is it going to cost me? And a very simple way to sign up. It's got to be bug level. It's got to be so simple, so easy to understand that anybody knows what you're talking about. Level. That's frightening. We're supposed to be the most industrialized country in the world. And your average society reads at a 6th grade level? Huh, that's terrible. But you know what I found out recently? Are you familiar with the USA Today paper that comes out daily, the color one? You know what grade level it's written on? 3rd grade. 3rd grade. So as I say, when you put your maintenance agreement brochure together, keep it bug level. Keep it easy to understand. How do I want to test it? Get some 5th or 6th graders together, give them a pizza or two, and say, hey, read this, see if it makes sense to you. If they understand it, you got a great brochure. If not, you may want to go back and simplify it a little bit. That's just a real quick example of a maintenance agreement brochure. This is a threefold brochure. On the front, obviously, it has your name, company name, and address, and phone number. On the back of it, it says, why do you want a maintenance agreement? And it shows you the value of having multiple systems. You give them a discount for multiple systems at the same location? Absolutely. Why? You don't have any travel for the second one. So yeah, I can give them a 5, 10, maybe 15% discount if they have multiple systems, because I don't have any travel time, and even with the reduced pricing, I'll still increase my profitability. Now inside the brochure, why do I want to buy one? Again, very simple, straightforward. It's going to reduce my fuel bills, a little bit about that. It's going to prolong the equipment life, a little bit about that. It's going to maximize safety, a little bit about that. What am I going to offer them? Annual or semi-annual clean and check of the equipment. They're going to get that 5, 10, 15, or 20% discount on parts or labor or both. That's up to you. And they're going to get priority service. Benefits are crystal clear. Bottom line is peace of mind. On the right-hand side, just a very, very simple way to sign up. If you've got one furnace and air conditioner, it's this price. If you've got 2 systems, it's this price. I want some additional information. Check that off. Simple, straightforward, easy to understand. Now, once you've got your threefold brochure, what are you going to do with it? The first thing I suggest is you do a direct mail piece to your current customer base. Those people are already using your services. Secondly, include a copy with each proposal you send out. Thirdly, leave a copy on every service call. Just can't hand it to the customer, then just lay it on the table. And they make great handouts at home shows and local expos and things like that. Let's look at each of those in just a little bit more detail. First thing I want to suggest you do is you send out a physical letter to your current customer base. Make sure it's on your stationery, and make sure on the top it has a header. Okay? This particular one says new maintenance agreement program, special offer to who? Our current customers. Then a little bit of blob in the middle of the letter. It basically reinforces all the benefits of a maintenance agreement, which are in your brochure, hearing it over and over again. And then down at the bottom, there's a PS. Okay. PS says, as a valued customer, use a coupon to the right, it'll save you money. Whatever you're going to pay for a commission for selling a maintenance agreement, 10, 15, 20 bucks, as I talked about earlier, then give the customer a $20 discount. Why? Because nobody earns a commission on those. The company sold them. So you can give them that extra bonus of the commission amount not have any problem whatsoever. Okay. Customer base, and again, statistically, people always read the header, they always read the PS, and they may or may not read what's in between. So you've got to get your message across in those two areas. This is a letter that Culligan sent out to Bill Kennard up in our Green Bay office. And it's rather interesting as well. They're a direct mail piece on their maintenance agreement program. They talked about the different things they're going to do, schedule appointments. You can call their office, or you can send them an email, or in their case, you could also go through their website. Okay? You got to make it easy for the people to sign up. Again, we've got the older people like myself who won't do anything perhaps with a computer. And then you got the millennials out there who don't do anything except through Facebook or email or things of that nature. So you got to be able to market to both types of customers. Now the cost of a direct mail piece, let's say we got 3,000 customers in our customer base. It's going to cost you about 65 cents a piece. For the brochure, people in round figures, it's going to cost me about $2,000. If I get a 5% return on my 3,000 customer base, that's 150 new service agreement customers. That's a pretty good start. Well, 150 customers, even if I only charged $129.95, which is pretty low, that's a $20,000 return on a $2,000 investment. That's pretty good. And if you're familiar with any of the statistics on bulk mailing, you've probably heard these before. If you bulk mail to a total stranger, they always tell you you'll get a 0.5 to 1.5% return. I've done many of those over the years. I don't do them anymore, but I used to. I don't think I've ever gotten more than 0.25% back. There's just too much stuff coming in the mail to people. If they're not familiar with you, they're not even going to open it, much less respond to it. However, if you bulk mail to your current customer, people who know you and have used you before, then you should get at least a 3 to 5% return. And if you bulk mail to your current customer and do a follow-up call, and that could be somebody in your office, you could hire a temp, 2, 3, 4 days after you've mailed it out, just follow up with a phone call. Hey, Mrs. Jones, you're one of our customers for many years. Just wanted to make sure you got information on the maintenance agreement program. If you follow up with a physical phone call, usually you can get a 15% return or higher. Okay? And keep in mind, you only need 200 pieces of mail to qualify for bulk mail pricing. Telephone on hold is another great marketing tool for maintenance agreements. Hopefully each of you has a commercial on hold or some other type of on hold system. It's absolutely required as far as I'm concerned, because when you have a professional on hold system, it's saying a couple of things to your customer without you having to say a thing about it. Number one, it's saying I'm a real company and I'm a large company because I have an on hold system. Okay. Now, when you have a commercial company, like Commercials on Hold, but there's several others out there obviously, do your on hold message for you, you get to script it or help them script it. So let's say your scripting is going to have something to do with your maintenance agreements. I don't care if the phone hasn't rung for 3 hours in the morning. When it rings, whoever picks it up said, hello, Mr. Ms. Jones, can I put you on hold for just a couple of seconds? I'll be right back. Okay, won't be very long. Thank you. Put them on hold. What are they listening to on the back? All the information about your maintenance agreement program. And don't put them on hold for more than 15 seconds ago, so we don't want to irritate them in another process. But you know exactly what they're listening to. When you get them back on the phone, say, I'm sorry, Mr. and Ms. Jones, I couldn't get to you right away. By the way, have you heard anything about our brand new maintenance agreement program? Matter of fact, I did. I just heard that on your top. Oh, really? And you start up a conversation. Okay? A typical on-hold system is going to cost you about $450 a year. That includes the mechanics of getting the thing properly handled, the scripting, professional scripting of the message, and the recording of it as well. That's something you might want to consider. Okay. A couple more marketing ideas: insert a brochure with each and every proposal. Have a section in your customer response card that says, hey, do you have a maintenance agreement with our company yet? Again, marketing over and over and over again. If you do a quarterly newsletter, mention in your newsletter, do you have a maintenance agreement with our company? And we also want a big printed block on your stationery, on your invoice. Next time you get your invoices printed, consider putting a little block in there And inside their block, all you got to say is, in red letters, do you have an annual maintenance agreement with our company? If not, call such and such a number. Again, reminding them over and over and over again the need for a maintenance agreement program. In terms of incentive programs, we already talked about having the seller of the agreement earn a commission. Well, we suggested $20. I think that's a good number. Think about giving bonuses for the top seller of maintenance agreements each month. If you're a larger company, set departmental goals. Whoever set the most gets a special bonus system. Or you can set company goals. Hey, when the company sells 100 maintenance agreements, we're all going to go out to dinner that night. Set realistic goals and celebrate your victories. Celebrate your victories. Okay? Now, when it comes to pricing a maintenance agreement, there's two distinct theories in terms of pricing, and both have value. One is to be the low price guy in town, and the other is to sell for profit. Both have logic behind them. It's just different. Lowball guy in town, what he's thinking is this. Now, I'm probably older than many of you listening to this, but have you ever heard the term service station before? If you're above 50, you probably have. If you're not, you don't know what I'm talking about. A service station, in the old days, you would drive your car into the service station where you got gas. Somebody else would pump the gas for you. When they were pumping your gas, what else would happen? Well, they would check your tires, they'd check your radiator, they'd check your oil, see if you're low. They'd wash your window. Okay. Now, why did they check your oil on every single car that came through? Because guess what? Oh, person walks up to your window, shows you the dipsticks, and hey, you're 2 quarts low. You're going to say, gee, thank you very much for letting me know that. I think I'll go to Kmart or Walmart and I'll pick up some cheap oil. No. You're going to get them to put it in right then, high-priced oil, get the problem taken care of. That's the whole theory behind the low-price guy. Get in enough homes, talk to enough people, and you'll eventually find some repairs and or some replacement that needs to be done. Nothing wrong with that theory. Personally, though, I like the other guy who's priced for profit. The first guy who is the low ball is going to be in your house for maybe 15 minutes. If I'm going to price for profit, I'm going to give you real value. I'm going to be there 45 minutes to an hour, maybe a little bit more. And I can absolutely guarantee you if I've got a qualified technician doing a maintenance agreement and he's there for an hour, he's going to find something that needs repairing or replacing along the way. He'll find some add-on sales. Now keep in mind when you're setting your maintenance agreement pricing and any other pricing within your company for that matter, always round up to the nearest $5. They found out statistically most Americans think in $5 increments. So if you price out your maintenance agreement and it comes out to $137.95, make it out to $132, make it $134.95. Now go up to the nearest $5 increment because the customer sees no difference at all. But when you sold 200, 500, 1,000 maintenance agreements, that makes a big difference on your bottom line. Now, upfront pricing or flat rate pricing is the ideal system to sell maintenance agreements. Most of you are probably on that already. But the beauty of maintenance agreements and flat rate pricing, you normally show the customer the price of the repair, and then right next to it is the price if they were a maintenance agreement customer. They can see the actual savings they're going to have that day. And then the spiel goes like this: Mr. and Ms. Jones, your price would normally be this. However, if you sign up for a maintenance agreement today, I can give you a 15 or 20% discount on today's call. You begin to sell maintenance agreements right and left. It's the ideal tool to sell maintenance agreements. Now, make it easy for the customer to pay. That's very, very, very important. Depending on the price of your agreement, you may want to bill monthly or quarterly, semi-annually or annually. The newer thing that's gone on in the industry for the last several years is to get the customer's permission for a monthly charge on their credit card. Okay? So let's say your maintenance agreement is $150 a year. Offer them the opportunity to have it charged monthly on the credit card for $12 a month. Well, that's $144. They'll save $6 for the year. The beauty of that is Once you have them on that program, they'll never, ever quit. People are lazy. People are lazy. Once they sign up, they'll never, ever cancel. So I want you to strongly consider setting people up on a maintenance agreement program that charges their credit card on a monthly basis. Now, when it comes to renewals, obviously, if you're going to charge on a monthly basis, that's the ideal situation. Why? Because there's no renewal to it. It just continues. But if you're not going to charge it to their customer, at least use what we call the assumed renewal. You just call Mr. and Ms. Jones and say, by the way, Mrs. Jones, it's time for your annual maintenance on your equipment. Would next Thursday be okay? And we'll just pick up a check for the maintenance agreement while we're there. Just to assume they're going to renew. Do not go out there and tell the customer, by the way, would you like to buy another maintenance agreement for next year? Why? We just started the whole sales process all over again. Now, if you're not going to pay a commission on the renewal, then you can give them whatever discount you want to give them that you paid for the spiff for the commission to the seller. So if you had a $10 commission and they're going to renew and you're not going to pay it again, then you can offer that as an incentive for the customer to sign up again. Okay? Now, I want to finish off with one thing. It's called the law of money. We have a program called the Profit University Audio Series. We've had it for over 20 years. And every month it's on a different business topic by a different national speaker. And I think it was a third or fourth speaker we had, so we're talking 20 years ago, so keep that in mind. It was a guy by the name of Jim Brown from Mountain Home, Arkansas. He was an HVAC contractor. And Jim describes his town as being so small that the nearest town with an elevator in it was 50 miles away. Small town. But in that little town, he did over $1 million worth of sales each year, gross sales in his heating and air conditioning business. And he was making a nice profit. But he didn't offer maintenance agreements. Now, Jim coined a little term called the law of money. And the law of money, personal or business, will tend to absorb every dollar that's in it. In other words, however much money we got in our account, we tend to sell it, spend it. And if we don't have a lot of money in our account, somehow we made it through the month. It's the law of money. We tend to spend what we have. Now, Jim decided, on the back of his tape, he decided to talk about his maintenance agreement program, which he had started several years earlier. But Jim understood the law of money. Now, again, this was 20 years ago. And at that point, Jim had a very successful company. He was making a nice profit. He was going to add on maintenance agreements. And because the fixed overhead was already covered for his company, 20 years ago, he could offer an annual maintenance agreement for $100. His actual cost was about $50 with a $50 profit on there. But Jim understood the quote-unquote law of money. He knew if he just took that maintenance agreement income, put it into his general account, at the end of the year, what was going to happen? We're going to get a nice accounting report that said he sold $25,000 worth of maintenance agreements, but there's no extra money in his account. The law of money ate it up. So before he started and sold his first maintenance agreement, he went to the person in the office who handles the accounting, handles the dollar. He said, this is what I want you to do. When we get a $100 check in for a maintenance agreement, I want you to deposit the check that day, but the same day, run a check for $50, the profit portion of that, and put it in a savings account. If we sell 3 of them that day, write a check for $150, put it in our savings account. When our savings account grows to this particular level up here, what I want you to do is take 30 minutes off, go to the bank, and buy a 12-month CD with it. Don't ask me about it. We don't need the money right now. Just do it. Now, Jim can be kind of comical on this next part. I can't do it as well as he did. But he said, you know, sometimes things get kind of quiet in Mountain Home, Arkansas, just not a whole lot going on. And on slow days like that, he said, I like to go back to my house. From the front of my house, I got this great big comfortable rocking chair. He said, I'll go up on that on my porch and I'll sit in my rocking chair and I'll rock back and forth, back and forth. So you know what I'm doing when I'm rocking back and forth? It's like the thumb of CDs. Sounds kind of like this. Back and forth. Back and forth. He said, you know what? I've been selling maintenance agreements now for about 7 years. It's kind of like it used to be, but it's a little bit different. Now when I sit on my front porch and I thumb my CDs, it's more like this. Back and forth. Back and forth. Said no, be very happy. Okay. If you don't do anything else we talked about today, I want you to do this next thing. I want you to take $100 out of your general checkbook in your business. I don't care if you're a one-man operation or a multi-million-dollar company. I want you to take $100 out of your account and put it in a savings account or a mutual fund. You do that on a weekly basis over the year. At the end of the year, you put in $5,200. Now, the average mutual fund historically earns 12%. I realize they haven't been doing that recently, but historically they'll earn 12%. You put $100 a week in over 5 years, you're going to have nearly $35,000, which includes the growth. Within 10 years, you're going to have $100,000 in there. I don't know about you, but that's a pretty nice little nest egg. And again, you'll never miss it. Never, ever miss it. I can't tell you how many contractors have come up to me at the end of a conference or during a conference and said, you know what, Tom? I started taking money in my checkbook like that. That's the best thing I've ever done for myself and my family. We just never seem to have a savings. Well, now it's automatically taken out at the office. I don't think, gee, we've got a significant amount of money in there. Okay. So again, I want to encourage you to create, if you don't have a maintenance agreement program, create one. If you do have one, use some of the things we talked about today to hopefully improve it a little bit. Keeping in mind that a maintenance agreement program is literally the foundation stone for profitable growth. Now, if we can help you here at Grandy & Associates with that or any other business concern you might have, please give us a call. I appreciate your time today, and have a great rest of the day. Thank you.